What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk through 5 players to trade off of your Dynasty team before it's too late. We talked about it on Wednesday, but this Dynasty landscape is frozen in time. The draft is going to happen at the end of April, and we are going to see players change teams. We're going to see rookies get landing spots. Rookies are then going to displace running backs and crowd wide receiver rooms, and a lot is going to change here. So you have about a month to act and make some moves based off of the current landscape. I looked through the Dynasty ADP. I pulled out 5 players I think are going way too high in startups, and we're going to talk through today why I think that is and who you can trade those players away for right now. So with all that being said, if you enjoy, make sure to get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
VVS stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen, she gon' let me.
And as always, with these buy and sell trade target videos, you can find the entire thing on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I have all of my buys and sells outlined on there in the rankings, my top 250 Dynasty rankings, my top 45 rookie rankings. I'm going to do an RS grade update on Monday as well to account for all the new Pro Day data and draft capital projections, so it's all on there. I think it's like $7 to $8 a month, so if you want to go out there, you have rookie drafts, you have Dynasty teams, make sure you check it out. There will be a link in the description in the comment section down below. Our first player here is going to be TJ Hockenson. I have TJ Hockenson as a screaming sell because he's one of these tweener assets that gets so weird with these injuries because he's not a contending asset, right? He's not going to help you this year as somebody coming off an ACL tear. I believe he tore his ACL in December and had surgery later than that. And then he's also not that young. He's going to be, I believe, 26 in week 1 of this season. And yet, with that being said, where he's in this kind of like limbo area, he is still valued in Dynasty right next to all of the big tight ends. Now, of course, this is going to be this is dynastydatalab.com, I believe, by Adeko. It's the same stuff that he's always done. Adeko is one of the hidden gems, is what I would really say, in the fantasy community. He has a lot of really cool stuff going on, but this is taking March ADP from Dynasty Startups. You can see TJ Hockenson's right in that gap where, yes, he's behind Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid, but he's in the same round, and he's a round and a half more expensive than your George Kittle and Travis Kelce. So he's kind of, again, in this no man's land. Now, the reason why I'm so set on him not being a contending asset and not really working out in 2024 is the ACL tear. This is from Dr. Jesse Morris. TJ Hockenson, he tore his ACL and MCL. A horrific injury that I don't even want to go off schedule. But the tackle where the Detroit Lions player just absolutely he did it to Tyler Higbee as well, I believe, where he comes in and just absolutely like decleats your knee and pushes it back the wrong way. To me, that's worse than the hip drop. But that's a conversation for another day. He had surgery on January 29th, 2024. That is rough. That is really rough. Details: Hockenson had to wait 36 days after his injury to allow his MCL sprain to heal up before he was stable enough to get his ACL reconstructed. Okay, so it says torn ACL and then MCL. It wasn't a torn MCL. It was a sprained MCL grade 1 to 2 sprain. So he had to wait for that to happen. Then he gets his ACL reconstructed. And this delay will cause Hockenson to be only 7 months and 2 weeks from week 1 of the 2024 season, which is really not good. I realistically can't see him returning before week 7 to 9 of the season, and that's assuming no setbacks. Think of him returning similar to Kyler Murray did this year, missing about half of the season while starting on the PUP. He won't be fully 100% until the 2025 season. It's simply too risky for him to try and be ready for week 1. Unfortunate news for the elite tight end, and this should knock him out of early fantasy draft consideration. So we really shouldn't be expecting him to be all that great in 2024. On top of that as well, he loses Kirk Cousins. You're going to have Sam Darnold or a rookie quarterback. So to me, his 2024 season is gone. He's not really going to help you out. And when you sort of look deeper here, I don't think people have, again, truly processed the projection here, because when we look on Underdog, they have ADP going right now in their big board drafts. By the way, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. They have drafts going on. They got baseball drafts going on. They got basketball. They have the pick'ems where you can go higher or lower on player projections, whether that's home runs, hits, basketball, could be threes, rebounds. All of that is on there. It's all great. Use promo code RON, and they will match your first deposit up to $100. You can find a link to that down below in the description and the comment section down below. You click it, it'll take you to Underdog Fantasy. It'll use my promo code Ron, and it will match your first deposit up to $100. Now, when we kind of, vet this out here with TJ Hockenson, and you look at, this is the top 20 Dynasty tight ends ranked by Dynasty ADP. To the left of the Dynasty ADP, I have their Underdog ADP. So where are they going in redraft? TJ Hockenson, you can see here, he is the tight end 7 in Dynasty. He is going 121.4 on Underdog, which just sticks out like a sore thumb. He, in terms of redraft value, shouldn't be in that Kincaid-Kelsey range. He should be all the way down to Kmet, Mayer, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz. That's really his true area in terms of what he can bring you this year. He is the worst value for a contending team. So again, that's pretty clear, right? He's coming off an ACL tear. He's not going to help you in 2024. Well, the issue is you go to the last column all the way to the right. He's already 26.7. He'll be, I believe, 27. He'll be 27 in week 1 of this year. I think I said 26 earlier. He'll be 27 in week 1 of this year. So he's not a rebuilding asset. He's going to get older. And when we look at Ryan Heath has great data. He had a article last year going through age curves and when players start to fall off. And we can see here this year it is his 6th year, TJ Hockenson. So you can see 123.5% production. Usually a peak of a tight end's career is year 2 through year 6. We are forfeiting year 6 because of the ACL. And now in year 7 will be 2025. He should be fully healed by then, but that's when he's going to be starting to decline. So like you're foregoing his prime. He's not producing now. Like if you're going to forego his prime, then he needs to give you something really good right now production-wise. And it's just not there. So he's just pretty awful in terms of a dynasty asset. And to me, instead of being valued next to your Kincaid and Mark Andrews, he should really be more in that Kelsey Kittle range in those, picks 70, 73 through 85 in startups. And he's still being valued that highly, which just makes no sense to me. So the market being this stubborn, if I could cash out, I would. Because again, he's not going to be useful this year. He's going to lose value. He's, getting to the back half of his career at this point. I know it feels crazy because he's only had 5 seasons to play, but this is going to be year 6 that he's letting go. And then year 7 is when you're expecting him to be back. And again, that's when we see tight ends start to decline. So I have a tough time being excited about that dynasty asset. And I'd be looking to tier up or tier down. I'd want to tier up to a Kyle Pitts, a Mark Andrews, a Brock Bowers, if that's even on the menu, of course, like adding to the Hockenson side. Or you could tier down, maybe net a future first and go for like Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz. I don't even mind going, like if there's a rebuilding team with Kelsey and he'd rather hold on to Hockenson and be like, oh, well, once Hockenson's all healed up, his value will go up. Well, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, it feels like his value is already at his ceiling, right? Again, he's in that same round as Kincaid and Mark Andrews, and he's only getting older, and the market's not going to hold strong when he's not producing for the next year. So, again, it's a really tough sell for me. I'm very curious to know how you guys feel about Hockenson, but you can get some pretty dang good value right now just off of like name value and just kind of goodwill of what he's been the last few years. But we kind of have to remember he's not going to have Kirk Cousins this year. The ACL is a problem. Like he's only getting older, and you can still trade out of TJ Hockenson for good value. If I could trade Anthony Richardson and TJ Hockenson for Hurts and a future first, I would do that all day. And I don't even hate Anthony Richardson, but upgrading a quarterback and collecting a first to get Hockenson off my team, I would do that all day long. I'd be curious to know. Yeah, I mean, like this too. The 112 and a future first for Hockenson in a second, that's pretty easy for me. If I could net any kind of first for Hawk, I would. What else? Does anything else stick out? Oh yeah, by the way, this is Dynasty Daddy's fantasy football trade database. It takes trades from a bunch of actual leagues. These are all Dynasty leagues. I have it set to Dynasty 2 quarterback, 0.5 PPR and 1 PPR. Pretty much any tight end premium, it lists it for you, and then 10 through 14 teamers. And you can see here it has the stats on each league across the bottom. So when we look at other trades, what else sticks out? Is anybody? Yeah, I mean Hockenson for Andrews straight up. I mean, give me Andrews there all day long. I want to pick out 2 more here. I might even search for a particular player. Like this one too. I mean, Hockenson and Marquise Brown for essentially James Cook and Travis Kelce. I would do that in a heartbeat as well. Hockenson for, like, I'll be honest, like almost any first that would be enough for me to trade out of him. The 110 I'd be fine with. Kincaid, Hockenson, a 3rd and a 4th for Kincaid. I would do that as well. Hawk for Andrews. Even if you have to put even if you have to do like a third plus Hawk or maybe a second plus Hawk for Andrews and a third, I would be open to it as well. 112 and a third for Hawk. This is about even. Like, this is probably the lowest I'd sell him for. But I wouldn't hate it a ton. I am curious to know if there's I do want to just see the Kelce trades for Hockenson, because this is really what I'd be targeting here. Yeah, let's click search and not be an idiot here. Kelce in the 109 for Hockenson and Devontae Adams. I love that. I would do that for sure. Everything too many pieces here. Pollard and Hawk for Kelce. I can't get there. But you guys see what I'm saying? Kelce and Hopkins for Hawk. That's not terrible if I was a contending team, but that doesn't feel great. Yeah, Hockenson for Kelce in a third. I'd want to net a little. I'd want like a second in Kelce if I could. Like Ridley and Kelce, that's fun. Again, we talked about in the other video, there's going to be teams with a Kelce rotting on their bench, and maybe they have a Ridley too or a Hopkins from when they were trying to go all in and they want to rebuild now. Maybe you throw them Hockenson and see it. I think that it's almost like bait. Like, I think rebuilding teams are going to want to buy Hockenson thinking that his value will go up after the ACL heals, but he's only getting older, so I have a hard time seeing how his value goes up in that respect. Now, moving on, our second must-sell trade candidate here is going to be Rachaad White. Now, he's been a sell for us for a while. I always go back and forth on if he's a sell. Right now, when you look at where he's at in ADP, he is the 6'10". He is going ahead of the 109, which I would sell him for the 109 straight up today. George Pickens, Jaden Reed. I wouldn't mind Jaden Reed for him. I don't even love JSN or Addison, but I would take them over him. There's just a lot to like here, especially the draft capital, especially the quarterback options as well. If I could turn Rachaad White into Will Levis on a team that needs a quarterback, I would love that as well. There's just a lot that you can move off of Rachaad White with, and it seems like because he's one of the big winners of free agency that there's some, I wouldn't call it hype, but there's some people who do love him. Now, the thing that scares me off of Rachaad White is I think he's a great pass catcher, right? I think that I don't have a great comp, but, just like you're very, I'm not going to say J.D. McKissick, Theo Riddick, but these guys who are pass-catching specialists is kind of what it seems like he's trending towards. Now, can he be Austin Eckler? Maybe, but he's never been that efficient in his entire career this far. I'm trying to think of like some other just very, very much pass-catching slanted type players that are his size. But he just screams to me a guy who is I guess like a Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds are like decent comps for him, but just a guy who is a receiving specialist and kind of got shoehorned into a between the tackles role last year. He had the second most rush attempts in the NFL, 272. That is a lot for a guy who is not good at running the ball between the tackles. That's my biggest issue with him, is he's getting pushed up right now into the 6th round as a running back. And if I could sell a running back for first round value right now on a guy who, isn't your upper echelon of like Gibbs, Brees, Bijan, you could even tell me, you know what, Ron, you're going crazy for Kyron Williams. Like, you can't be selling him. He's a 1-2 turn round pick in underdog drafts or redraft. That's fine. But Rachaad White's in like this dead zone running back territory on redraft in underdog. He's going at I pick like the 40-ish range. So he's like a 4th round pick on underdog. He's kind of just a projection where there's no one else in his backfield. People are projecting him to get that same workload he just got. But we still have the NFL draft. It's not a strong running back class, but they could still take somebody on day 2. And again, I think that he's a fine pass catching back, but he thrived on just being this guy who had a ton of volume last year. Like, he had a lot of volume. And when you break it down to what he is as a rusher, that's where it's concerning for me, because I think he's much more of a committee back than he is this like bell cow workhorse. This is a graphic we've been using from David Zach. He does really, really cool work here where you can see this is yards created over expected per attempt. It adjusts for offensive line, defensive stacked box percentage, yards before and after contact, line yards, volume. It's an all-encompassing stat, and it passes the sniff test. You go up to the top, Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, James Conner, Jalen Warren, Khalil Herbert, Raheem Mostert, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry. Like, to me, those were like 10 of the best pure rushers last year. So it checks out to me. And then on the bottom, Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White, Joe Mixon, Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, Javonte, Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders. To me, this list checks out. And Rachaad White had the second worst yards created under expected or over expected. He was brutal. And we can just look across the board at every stat we want. This is just sorting rushing yards over expected per attempt. So just based on the offensive line, the situation, how many yards should he have gotten, he was only better than Jamal Williams, Kareem Hunt, Dameon Pierce, Alvin Kamara, and Miles Sanders last year. Absolutely brutal at minus 0.41. And when we look at everything as a whole, you can see here his elusiveness rating 41st, missed tackles forced per rush 43rd, explosive rush percentage 45th, 48th in yards after contact per attempt, rushing grade 50th, rushing yards over expected per attempt 44th. Like, again, just a pretty brutal runner of the football. And we do like his volume, right? We look here, this is expected points. So based on his rush attempts, his receiving volume, goal line work, all of that, how many points should he have put up? He should have put up 15.1. 15.1 EP or expected points per game is behind just McCaffrey, Kyron, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Eckler, Mixon, Saquon. So like the RB8 in volume. And he actually overperformed that with 0.9, which is good. He was efficient on that volume to some degree. 16 points per game, flirted with RB1 status. He might have been a back-end RB1 last year. But the issue is that we go over to the rushing expected points per game. He had 9 expected rushing points per game, 9.1. He was minus 1.1 on those. So very inefficient as a runner. That's where it's like, I would be shocked if that sticks, where, he gets 9.1 rushing expected points per game again this year. Like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense, where we've seen him now be in this role. He's not too great at it. Why would they deploy him in that same way once again? It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Now, I am trying to look for the thing. Damn it, I don't think I have these stats that I'm looking for. But I might just take a picture of it real quick. But the reason that it gives me pause is it's like, well, maybe he can just kind of like bounce back. Efficiency is not super sticky year to year. But the issue that I have is that he was this guy in college. He wasn't a guy in college that was like the best rusher in the world. You kind of had to sell yourself on him being Alvin Kamara-like or Eckler-like, where he's not going to ever give you like 1,000-yard rushing seasons and he's going to be efficient in the passing game. And he can certainly do that, but he didn't get enough last year, where you can see that 6 rushing expected points per game is like lower than Saquon. It was like right on par with Joe Mixon. Like, these guys aren't passing specialists. Like, you can see he did not have your McCaffrey 8+ receiving EP, your Kamara 9.5, your Eckler 7.7, your Jahmyr Gibbs 7.5. He was much more in like that ETN Saquon range of guys that, flirt with like 50 catches in a year, right? Not guys who flirt with like 80+ catches in a year. So that's kind of what throws me off when it comes to him in terms of like just his overall projection here. But I'm going to have this up in a second here. But his like yards after contact per attempt, his missed tackles forced per attempt, Rachaad White, they weren't all that special in college, which is why I have some pause thinking that he can expand on that. Like, to me, I think that he is just a committee back that's going to be leaning towards the passing game, like almost kind of like what DeAndre Swift was for the Lions, but in like a less prettier way, I guess. Like, we'll see. But again, I do think that they're gonna bring somebody in. I've been trying to get this picture up here for a minute here. But you can see this is what he was in college. It wasn't anything too special, where missed tackles forced per touch was like, you could see the percentiles. It's like a very light shade of green. Yards after contact per attempt is like a white. Percentage of yards that go 10 or more, or percentage of runs that go 10 or more yards, 15%, 15 plus. Yard percentage was 7.56%, also not great. Elusiveness rating was fine, and then the big stuff, receiving fantasy points per snap, 8.25 receiving points per game. That's all great. We like pass catching backs, but I have a hard time thinking that receiving EP is going to just like skyrocket out of nowhere. And I think that rushing EP is going to go down just depending on who they get in the draft. They changed offensive coordinators. Like, we'll truly see how that role changes this year. They have picks 57, 89, 92, 125, Tampa Bay. They've been linked to running backs a ton. I could see them bringing in, an Audric Estime, a Braylon Allen, somebody to kind of Ray Davis, somebody to, bang between the tackles, take some of that load off of Rachaad White. Can he be an efficiency, space back? Sure. But I just don't really understand paying up for that when you can just tear down to like an Aaron Jones instead. Like, you're paying this premium for his age and last year's production, and I just don't know that it's all that efficient. Like, again, if you have any opportunity to trade, and we're not talking about these upper echelon guys, right? Like your Breece Halls and your Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. There's like maybe 5 running backs that are like truly really, really good in Dynasty. If you can trade off of these other guys in the teens, the low teens, and you can somehow net a first or better assets, I really would. So let's see what he's trading for, because this will be a journey for me and you together here. Maybe I'll end up, eating my shoe here, and he's not going to trade for anything that's all that sexy. But let's see. Rachaad White for Fields. I'm personally good on that. Let's see. Rachaad White and T. Higgins for 2 firsts and Deontay Johnson in a second. I really do wish that I could sort this. Like just make it so it trades that are only 6 players at most. Because let's see. I'm struggling to get to a trade. Yeah, like this is what I'm talking about. If I could trade Rachaad White for the 109, really anything in like the 10, I think the break-even point for me would be like the 111, 112, but like 109 feels great. Nico Collins for Rachaad White in the 201, I would do that in a heartbeat. Let's see. Rachaad White for Debo and Zeke, I'd probably pass. Rachaad White, the 111 and the 105 for the 101 and the 206. I think I'd do that really easily. If I want the 101, Caleb, you're trading, I guess this is about even. I'll say about even. I'm not going to say like a steal or anything. Does he go for anything else that's all that sexy? Rachaad White, 209 for Jacobs and Derek Carr. No, I'm not all that excited about that. Rashad Javonte Najee in the 201 for the 102. I mean, yeah, but that's obviously somebody getting taken advantage of there, if I'm being honest. Let's pick out one more. Yeah, if I can turn Rachaad White in a second and a fourth into Jalen Waddle, yes. Rachaad White, Puka, Pittman. I'll let Pittman and T. Higgins kind of cancel out here, so then it's Rachaad White and Puka for the 101. And I think I would do that, but that's like we're getting to pretty steep territory. Let's actually see. Can I just do like a 2024 first? Or is that not going to work? No, it's not. All right. I'm curious. Let's just see the 109 again. Rachaad White for the 109 straight up. Rachaad White and Goff. Yeah, I guess nothing else really. I mean, that's probably just like a team getting flipped around. I would love a deal. If you can do something like this, fellas, if you could do Rachaad White in a second for any of Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, maybe not Joe Mixon, but like the guys in this range of like Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, James Conner, because we're going to talk about them in a second, plus a first, but I don't even like Mixon, and he's actually a sell in this video, but if I had to tier from Rachaad White to Joe Mixon to net a first, and then I could just tier down from Joe Mixon again and net some draft capital, that's kind of the way that I'd be playing it. So again, if you can take Rachaad White in a second and do something slick like this where you get into the 2024 first round, I would absolutely love that. Now moving on to our next player, we have Kirk Cousins as a must-sell here. And Kirk Cousins, sort of similar to TJ Hockenson, where he's just like a little bit of a conundrum as an asset, where he is 36 years old, he's coming off an Achilles tear, and yet with that info, he is valued ahead of your big dogs, right? Like he is valued ahead of your Matthew Stafford. He's valued ahead of Geno Smith. They're not big dogs, but guys who are like the older quarterbacks, the veteran quarterbacks. There is a hefty premium here where he is more expensive than Bryce Young, more expensive than Will Levis, both things that are absolutely bonkers regardless. And then on top of that, he is 2 rounds more expensive than Stafford, 3 rounds more expensive than Rodgers and Geno Smith. And I just can't get there because, again, we're dealing with a guy who's about to be 36, off an Achilles tear, and that's really scary. Like an Achilles tear is no joke. And the issue with Kirk Cousins is he got it on his like throwing leg, like the one that you're stepping in, or no, I think it's his back leg. Yeah, I believe it's his back leg, which is a big issue. Now, Dr. Jesse Morris says, I feel like this needs to be said. Don't just assume Kirk Cousins is the same exact quarterback after his Achilles tear that he was before. That's not 100% guaranteed, especially since it's his throwing/power leg. It will be interesting to see if he loses any velocity and the ability to fit the ball into tight windows. Aaron Rodgers was his front leg, completely different situation. Yeah, so Kirk Cousins was his back leg, which is an issue, right? That's where you're driving a lot of your power from. And on top of that, he's old as hell. Like, I know he got a really big contract, but when you're in this range anyways, and like we're looking at this range, your Stafford, your Geno, your Kirk, you're looking for short-term production for as cheap as you possibly can get it, because your QB2 in Superflex is not winning you your league unless if it's a top 6 point per game quarterback, and I am completely fine betting against Kirk Cousins being that this year. Now, when we look at his underdog ADP, he is going at pick 121.7. That is like only a round ahead of Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, or like 1 to 2 rounds ahead of them. You have Baker Mayfield a little bit lower. You have Deshaun Watson a little bit lower. And when you kind of find the contending value by putting the underdog ADP up against the Dynasty ADP, he's a pretty brutal asset to have, where you can see Aaron Rodgers is a much better value, where he's 20 picks cheaper in redraft, but then 60 picks cheaper in Dynasty. So he's giving you similar production for half the price. Same thing with Stafford, where he's only 15 picks lower on Underdog. Like, this is the difference between like QB 15 and QB 16. So I can't wrap my head around paying that far up, especially because he's not, you can talk yourself into it with like, Justin Fields has 0.52 contending value, which is brutal, but he's 25.1. Maybe he develops into somebody. I would say more so your Will Levis and your Bryce Young, right? Terrible contending values, but their ages 24.8, 22.7, only in year 2. Then you look at Kirk Cousins, he's 35.6. So he's not giving you this massive edge in 2024. He's not going to finish as like a top 6 point per game quarterback. You're paying up for a guy off an Achilles tear. And I think it's a lot of this like hype from, him being a Falcon and like everyone's excited for Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And I heard Pat Crane talk about it on one of his shows. He's super smart. He won BBM 2 or no, I think he won BBM 3. Somebody that I value his opinion very highly of. And like his approach, he talked through redraft, and I think it's valid because he's just about the Atlanta offense as well. But he was kind of saying like, it's a spot where you don't have to stack with Kirk Cousins. Like, Kirk Cousins might be bad this year, and that might still be enough, just like within this offense with Zach Robinson, that Drake London and Kyle Pitts can still pay off with Kirk Cousins being like a middling QB2. Like, it wouldn't be all that shocking if that happened. Like, kind of like Tua wasn't amazing last year, but Tyreek still put in an amazing year. So it's not exactly correlated one for one when we're talking about a quarterback who doesn't scramble. Probably not going to be the highest pass attempt volume offense in the world either. And when we look at what Mike Clay has, which, by the way, Mike Clay's projections are out, which means we're going to be referencing them a lot. Here are his top 30 quarterbacks in fantasy. He has all of them playing 15 games. Kirk Cousins here is the QB 14. So, again, not really making a difference. And the other older guys I like that are cheaper than him in Dynasty, Aaron Rodgers is projected as the QB 8, which is really generous. But, again, for half the price in Dynasty, sign me up all day. Geno is one slot behind him, and again, like 2 to 3 rounds cheaper. And then Stafford has 242 projected points to Kirk Cousins 252. So that's a 10-point difference that you can get for 2.5 rounds cheaper. Again, like, I'm not all that I think Kirk Cousins is a good player, but him being like, I cannot wrap my head around this price tag. Where he is, again, like he is in this 6th-round area with like your Bryce Young, Will Levis, Deshaun Watson. And to me, he should be right next to Stafford. I guess like in between, Will Levis and Stafford is like probably where I would have him. So if I could tear down from Kirk Cousins, I absolutely would. I get that he has job security because of that contract, but he's old. We've seen, the Broncos just did it with Russell Wilson where they didn't care about the contract. He was that bad. We don't know what it's going to look like after the Achilles tear. And you're really paying up for production that's not like, you're not going to win your championship because Kirk Cousins was the QB 14. You're just not going to. So that's kind of where I have the issue. I would rather string together your Genos and Rodgers and string together. Last year we had Gardner Minshew start 14 games last year. You're going to have guys you can get for cheap. Sam Darnold is another one. So it's just tough. It just feels like a bad store of value on your dynasty team is really what I'm trying to say here. Now, when we look at what we can sell him for, we have some options. Wando in a second. I can't get there. The 206 for Kirk, I wouldn't hate. Actually, no, I would hate that. I'll take that back. But give me Diggs. Yeah, Diggs for sure. Devontae Adams for sure. This looks like just a whole lot of junk. If I could turn, I don't think that this is on the table. If you can turn Kirk in the 25 first into the 105, like straight up, I would. Kirk for 2 seconds. Kirk for 2 future seconds. If I was rebuilding, I'd be fine with that return, I think. Schultz and Kirk for Trey McBride. I actually absolutely love that. If I could take Kirk and add him to Hockenson and get to, Laporta, McBride, Pitts, maybe something back, absolutely I would. Kirk Cousins in the 201 for Will Levis, Sam Howell in the 206. That's about even for me. I do like Will Levis a lot more than Kirk Cousins, but you're selling Kirk Cousins presumably for less than Will Levis when the market would say they're about even. Let's see. Kirk Cousins for, come on. Come on. In a 2-quarterback 10-teamer, the 106, give me that for Kirk all day. I don't think you're going to get that, though. That's a bad trade to use. It's not very realistic. Kirk for the 201. You know what? Give me that. I'll do Kirk for the 201. I will. I'd be able to stomach that. Kirk, Trey Palmer, Davis Allen for Aaron Rodgers in the 202. I think I would do that as well. Like if I could do Rodgers in the 202, for Kirk, I absolutely would. Now, let's actually just cut to the chase here. One quarterback off an Achilles for another. 23 days ago. That's not going to really work for us. All right, let's try Geno, because I do want to cycle through those quarterbacks. Like, I want to try Geno. I wouldn't mind tearing up from Kirk, but I don't think you're going to be able to. I don't think you go from Kirk to Kyler. I don't think that's going to really work. Anything stay out? Kirk and Laporta for McBride, Metcalf, Geno. Can't do that. Kirk for Geno, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. If you can do Kirk for Geno in a future first, I mean, again, I don't know how reasonable that is or how accurate that could be in your league. But again, people are throwing ridiculous money around or ridiculous draft capital around for Kirk Cousins. If you have a guy out there who has like Drake London or Kyle Pitts and he's like very excited about what this offense could be and he wants to like complete a stack, go sell Kirk Cousins while he's a 6th-round startup value. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Now, our next player we're going to talk through is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon. Now, his price has seemingly skyrocketed on Keep Trade Cut. Not skyrocketed because he's not going like crazy high. You're not going to get you're not going to get the 105 for Joe Mixon, but in the last year, his value low has been RB33, and just recently he's now the RB18. But the issue for me is, like, I don't really get what changed, right? He gets traded to the Texans, but he just goes from the RB1 in a Joe Burrow offense to the RB1 in a CJ Stroud offense. Both exciting, but like it was already exciting before. Maybe that he goes from like having to compete with Chase Brown to Dameon Pierce. It's like a step up, but to me, Dameon Pierce and Chase Brown are probably like similar caliber players that, they're both fine. Like, I think Chase Brown is fine, but I don't think it's like this. I wouldn't like move him up, 12 spots in your rankings because of it. And the thing for me is that when we're talking about sort of trying to get the most value out of these players, Joe Mixon's a guy that I want as like my hero RB on a contending team. But I think there's cheaper ways to get to that production, and I showed it here where Mixon's valued in the 8th round right now in startups. Derrick Henry a round later. Give me Derrick Henry. You can go a round later than that and go to Aaron Jones, and you can get even a round later than that and get to James Conner. All 3 running backs I think are better stores of value for the point production you're going to get from them. Now, when we look at what they go on Underdog, we have Joe Mixon actually going, he's actually going like 20 picks after Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is the much better redraft play. Him and Aaron Jones are back-to-back, despite Aaron Jones being 2 rounds cheaper in Dynasty. And then James Conner isn't in that same tier in redraft, but I do think that he's so much cheaper that he's the way I'd rather play this. Now, when we go back to our David Zach graphic here, and we look at your yards created over expected per attempt, you can see Mixon is right there with your Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White as the 3rd worst on this list. He was not a good rusher last year. I can sort of beat that into the ground. He was semi-explosive, 19th of 49 rushers with 10.5% explosive run percentage, but then 27th in rushing yards over expected per attempt, 32nd in PFF rush grade, 37th missed tackles forced per attempt, 39th elusiveness rating, 44th yards after contact per attempt. He's also another year older. He is, to me at this point, like a replacement level running back. He's an average running back in the NFL, and that's fine. But that means that you could very easily get somebody drafted. We could see the Texans potentially get a Trey Benson, a Jalen Wright, Blake Corum. I don't know, whoever they really think. And I think they're going to really target somebody who fits their scheme. We showed this during the free agency video, but Scott Barrett makes a really good point here, where my concern here is the same as it was with Dameon Pierce. He's a good runner, but he might not be a great fit for Slowick's Shanahan-influenced outside zone running scheme. Man and gap concept zones, man and gap concept runs, 2022 to 2023, Mixon was about 4.45 yards per carry. On zone concepts, that goes 33%, it decreased to 3.35 yards per carry. He is much worse as a runner in outside zone scenarios, which is what the Texans build their offense on. So he isn't even a good scheme fit. And we just saw last year, despite Dameon Pierce being the incumbent guy, he wasn't a good fit for this scheme. And they didn't bring him in, but they, moved Devin Singletary to their RB1, so much so that I don't think Dameon Pierce registered a snap in their playoff games. So it wouldn't shock me if they drafted a guy who they see could fit this role better. He splits time with Mixon. Mixon might cede more volume than we really would like to admit, because the issue with Mixon is he's purely a volume play. And I have some concerns that, like the Buccaneers, they could bring in a running back that's better suited to their scheme, better suited between the tackles, or in Mixon's case, probably something that's better suited as like an outside zone runner that can also catch passes, and that would be really scary for Mixon. So that's where I'm at with it. Again, I just think there's cheaper ways to get the production you're looking for with the Mixon. He's not a terrible player to hold on a contending team, but I do think you could be more efficient with that roster value. Now, when we look at what he's trading for on Dynasty Daddy here, and by the way, I'll have this all linked down below. We have, let's see, what trades do we have going here? Too many pieces for me to wrap my head around. A.J. Brown, Mixon, it's just too many pieces. Mixon for Miles Sanders in a second. I don't think so. This just is a fake trade. Debo and Mixon for Tyreek, yes, I would do that all day. Mixon for Fields, probably not. Mixon and Keenan Allen for DJ Moore. I think I would. That's really close, though. Let's see. Waddle and Mixon for Puka, yeah, I would do that all day long. Mixon for, that's just a fake trade. I can't. A 2025 random first and a 204 for the 109 in Mixon. We say 109 and a 25 first are about even. I don't know. I'm gonna say no deal on that one. Mixon and Minshew for the 111 and 402. I actually don't hate that at all. If I could get really any first for Mixon, I think I would. Mixon and Marquise Brown for Flowers in a second all day. I would. Let's see. Is there anything else that sticks out? Mixon for the 203. Man, I really would rather a late first for Mixon. I know it's going to be rare that that's out there, especially right now while there's so much hype on picks. But I do think you'll get a bozo or two out there. That's like, I think the play is, I don't think you're going to get a 2024 first, but can you get a random 25 first for Mixon? It doesn't really seem like it. I mean, yeah, some of these trades are tough because there's so many moving pieces, and it's like I don't really know that that's all that accurate. So yeah, I don't know. I would love, like, is there any 112s out there? I'd love to sell him for a first, even if I have to, like, I would rather instead of trading him straight up for the 203, I'd rather add a second on my part to get to the 109 is kind of what I'm trying to say here. 112 for Mixon, Dolchich, and Schoonmaker. I could do that. I could get there. Mixon and Derrick Henry for the 112 and 206. If I was a rebuilding team, I would actually take that and kind of laugh to the bank if I'm being honest. All right, so you can see a first might not be attainable. I would kick the tires if you got to add a sweetener again, like maybe Mixon in a second for a first of any variety, really. Even if maybe even a, hold on, let's try one more time. Can we do what about a 2026 first? Can you do Mixon for just a random 26 first? I don't know. All right, I don't think many of those are getting traded. Now, our last player here is going to be one that you need to sell. Now, this one, it's not going to be a sell high. I don't know that you're even going to get much for him, but I would sell him because it seems like the market hasn't really reacted yet. But Cole Kmet is a brutal bet for fantasy purposes across the board. Redraft, Dynasty, all of it. For the simple fact of this. We want tight ends. We learned this from Andrew Cooper. He does great work. Maybe I'll have him on the channel this year because I'm always referencing his work. He's one of the best. I think his Twitter is at Coop A Fiasco. And he has done a lot of research. So you need to be a top 2 target tight end on your team, right? With Kelsey, it was him and Rashee Rice, Mark Andrews, it was him and Zay Flowers. I'm trying to think through last year, Hockenson, him and Justin Jefferson. But we now have Keenan Allen and DJ Moore in Chicago. I'm going to err on the side of caution. I don't think Cole Kmet is going to out-target either of them. So now we have more target competition. We also have a rookie quarterback who I think would be very bold to think he can support multiple wide receivers and the tight end. And then on top of that, the Bears bring in a new offensive coordinator. This coordinator has no allegiance to Cole Kmet. It's Shane Waldron. He's coming from the Rams and then the Seahawks last year, who he is bringing with him. They signed Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett played 1 year with him on the Rams and then played with him a little bit on the Seahawks. And now they are reuniting in Chicago. And Shane Waldron has a history of using a lot of tight ends, where last year we had Noah Fant, Colby Parkinson, and Will Dissly all run 145 or more routes. You can see Noah Fant ran 150 routes less than JSN, which means JSN's not even a full-time receiver, right? He's in the slot. Your tight end should be like just around where your slot receiver is running in terms of routes. Fant wasn't because of how much Shane Waldron likes using multiple tight ends. And we can see even deeper with SumerSports.com. Shout out to them. in 12 personnel and 13 personnel. That means 2 tight ends and 3 tight end sets. They ran 12 personnel, 10th highest rate in the NFL, 13 personnel, 2nd highest rate in the NFL. He loves to use multiple tight ends. That's why they went out there and they signed Gerald Everett. You're going to have a lot of 2 tight end sets with Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet, and that's an issue for Cole Kmet because sometimes he's going to be blocking, sometimes he's going to be doing, there's just more tight end rotation going on and tight ends on the field and blocking responsibilities, and it's really a hindrance for fantasy football. So again, target competition, rookie quarterback, a tight end that he's not all that exciting. He's like not super athletic. I haven't really liked Cole Kmet ever. But he is kind of seen as just like just a normal stock in Dynasty as like a 9th or 10th round startup pick. If I could cash out of him for really anything of meaning, I would. So let's look at what Cole Kmet is trading for on DynastyDaddy.com. What do we got? Anything good for Cole Kmet? Cole Kmet in the 109 for Kyle Pitts in the 203. My God, I would like whoever, if you are out there and you made this trade, DM me because I would like to shake your hand. Cole Kmet and DJ Moore for the 106, yes. A resounding yes. Cole Kmet and a bunch of junk for Ingram, no. I would debate it. I think that's like about even, but doesn't feel sexy. Cole Kmet for Dobbs, the 206 and 306, I'd be fine with that. Kmet for the 212. I'd want like a mid-second, but if that's like all you can get, this is like where it's like about even for me. Cole Kmet in a 4th for Freiermuth and some change. That feels lateral, but I would prefer Freiermuth over Cole Kmet at this point. Cole Kmet for Rondale in 2/3. That's not great. I actually love this. I don't know that this is on the table, but Kmet for like Darnell Washington and Rodgers. If you can turn Cole Kmet into Rodgers or Geno, or maybe you have to add a 3rd to get to Geno, and you're just looking for a backup quarterback, or not a backup quarterback, but a QB2, I would love that. You're not getting 2 seconds for Kmet, but that's obviously a smash. Anything else stick out? Yeah, if you can add Kmet to somebody and tier up, yes, please. Cole Kmet in the 202 for Addison. I would do that as well. So, yeah, I mean, Cole Kmet, he's still, like, he's not anything crazy, but he's still, like, a meaningful piece in a tier up or tier down. Like, if you are, I'm trying to think of, like, the tier up and tier, like, if you have Hockenson and Kmet and that can somehow get you into, like, if Hockenson and Kmet can get you like Kelsey and a 20, like let's say Hockenson, Kmet, and a future second can get you Kelsey and a future first. Boom. I'm doing something like that all day long. Kmet, I think he's just a good, I don't think you're going to get somebody that's just going to be like trade up for Kmet straight up, but Kmet's a nice like 2-for-1 guy. You can put him in a 2 and you can get a 1 back, something among those lines. So Cole Kmet, really easy sell for me. Now again, if you want access, I have buy and sell recommendations for every single player in my top 250. You can find it all on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I love all of you guys that are on there. You guys are the ones that keep the lights on in the basement during the offseason. So again, if you want access to top 250 rankings, my rookie rankings, my RS grade database dating back to 2007, you get my buy and sell recommendations. If you have a high enough tier, you can ask me trade questions, get your team reviewed. We're going to do a Patreon Dynasty Startup League as well. So that'll start next week. So you have like a few days to get in, but if you get in, you'll have a chance to be in it. And then the people who don't get in, I'll put them up for the Basement World Cup, which is a tournament we do on the Patreon where you have a league. There's like 5 of them now, and the playoffs all meet together at the top. A bunch of cool things are happening there. If you want access to everything that I do, like behind the scenes and everything data-wise, that'll all be on there. So make sure you check it out. But if not, I appreciate you just hanging out with me on a Friday, watching this video. We're getting close to draft season. So I know we just did trade target and whatever. April, we are hunkering down. We're doing a lot of rookie content for April. So I know some of you guys might be like, Ron, like we want to hear you talk about rookies. Well, we just talked about the wide receiver rankings, running back rankings like a week ago. This next week, we should have a quarterback or tight end rankings video. I want to do some spotlights as well on some guys that I think are really nice late round gems. Again, on Monday, I'm going to do an RS grade update, adjusting for RAS, draft capital, and I might even get into a little Debbie. We might even do the 2025 grades that day if I have enough time, which then we can do a 2025 preview video in April. So we'll see. We have a lot coming up here. I'm excited for it. But as always, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, ice around my body like I'm